A man stands in a shallow trench in the marshlands of southern Spain. The water at his boots is the color of weak tea. It is July 1922. He has searched for a city for 17 years. He will not find it. This is the story of a civilization that came back as a rumor. A man sits at a low wooden table in Athens. He is writing in Greek on a sheet of papyrus. The pen is a reed cut to a fine point. The ink is iron and oak gall, and it is drying unevenly on the rough surface of the papyrus. The year is around 450 BC. The word he is writing is Tartessos. Another man sits at another table in the same city 90 years later. He is also writing in Greek. He is in the middle of a dialogue about a great island that was swallowed by the sea in a single day and a single night. He has just written the name for the first time. He pauses the reed half a centimeter above the papyrus. The word he has written is Atlantis. A third man stands in a shallow trench in southern Spain. It is 1922. He has spent 17 years looking for the lost island Plato described. He believes the island is Tartessos. He is wrong. He is also in the right place. 100 years later, in October of 2017, 3 Spanish researchers in a laboratory in Madrid will look at a screen. Under the marshes of Donana, at the exact place where the German had dug for nothing, there will be straight lines, there will be curves, there will be a city. What did the Greeks know about a kingdom at the western edge of the world? Why did a German classicist spend his life digging the right swamp for the wrong reason? And how does a civilization survive when it survives at all? The worst forgetting a people can suffer. This is the story of Tartessos, the kingdom that traded silver with Phoenicians and Greeks for 500 years. The kingdom that wrote in a script whose signs can be read, but whose language cannot. The kingdom whose memory was carried for 2,000 years, only in books. The kingdom that, when its time was ending, burned its own temples and walked away. The kingdom that was almost lost forever, and almost saved by being mistaken for myth. And finally, exactly 1 century after the wrong man almost found it, was named. A man crouches in a narrow shaft cut 4 meters into the rock above the Tinto River. The shaft is barely wider than his shoulders. He has been there since the 2nd hour after dawn. With a short bronze pick, he scrapes at a thin vein of silver exposed against the wet stone. The handle is olive wood, worn smooth by his grandfather and his father, and by him. Water runs down the wall of the shaft beside him, the color of rust. The Tinto River is named for the color. The water carries iron and copper and sulfuric acid out of the ore-rich earth, and it stains everything it touches. His boots are stained, his shins are stained. If he stays in the shaft too long, the water will eat at his skin. He knows this. He works fast. The year is somewhere near 800 BC. He does not know the year. He knows the season. He knows the bend of the valley. He knows the shape of the family who works this hill and the shape of the families who worked it for 4 generations before him. What he is pulling out of the rock is silver. Not the only silver in the world, but among the richest deposits in the western Mediterranean. The southwest of the Iberian Peninsula is, in this period, one of the most metal-rich corners of the entire continent. Silver, copper, tin, some gold. The ships that come for it call this place the western edge of the known world. They sail through the pillars of Heracles and keep sailing against the Atlantic current until they reach a river that turns the sea orange where it pours out. 300 years before this man was born, ships from Tyre reached this coast. They built a trading post on an island off the next river south. They called it Gadir, which in their language means the wall. Today, it is called Cadiz. When it was founded around 1100 BC, it was the westernmost city any literate civilization knew. The Greeks would call this land Tartessos. The man in the shaft does not know that word. He does not need to. He works the vein. A man sits at a low wooden table in a small house in Athens. He is about 35 years old. He has dark hair pulled back, the beginning of a beard, and ink stains on his right thumb. The reed pen is between his fingers. The papyrus in front of him is the second sheet of a long account he has been composing for several years. The black ink, made from iron and oak gall, dries unevenly on the rough surface. He has to wait between strokes. He is writing about a king named Arganthonios. The year is around 450 BC. His name is Herodotus. He was born in Halicarnassus on the Aegean coast of what is now Turkey, and he has been traveling for most of his adult life. He has been to Egypt and to Babylon. He has spoken to Phoenician sailors and Persian veterans and Greek captains. The book he is writing will become, much later, the foundation of a genre that did not yet exist. It will be called Historia. Inquiry. The story he is putting down today comes from a Phocian captain he interviewed last week in the market by the Piraeus. The captain was old. He had sailed decades earlier into the Atlantic. He had reached a river the locals called the Tartessos. He had met the king there. The king's name, in Greek, was Arganthonios. It meant the silver man. From argyros, silver, with a suffix suggesting kinship with the substance, as if the king were not merely wealthy in silver, but somehow made of it. Herodotus writes, "The Phocians arrived at Tartessos, where they became great friends with the king, whose name was Arganthonios. He had ruled Tartessos for 80 years and lived to be 120. The longevity is fable. The figure is probably a composite of several kings whose names did not survive, but the kingdom is real. The Greeks of the 5th century BC know it as a real place where their own relatives have been welcomed and where the silver comes from. Herodotus is not recording a myth. He is recording a piece of news. When his book is read 4 centuries later, the kingdom will already be gone." A Phoenician captain stands at the prow of his ship in the harbor of Gadir. The harbor is on an island off the coast of southern Iberia. The year is around 700 BC. The morning fog still lies low over the bay. The crew is finishing the last of the loading. The cargo is silver. Bars of it, wrapped in goat hide and bound with a spotito rope, are being carried up the gangway. Each bundle weighs about 30 kilos. He has lifted enough of them to know the weight without touching. The bars feel heavier than they look. Silver does that. He holds a small cedar tablet on his left forearm and writes the tally on the wax with a bronze stylus. The letters are Phoenician, 22 consonants, no vowels. The same alphabet, with adjustments, will become Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. The letters he is making this morning are the ancestors of nearly every alphabet that will exist for the next 3,000 years. He does not know that. The ship is bound for Tyre. The voyage will take 4 to 6 weeks with good weather. He will return some months later with cedar, dyed cloth, and ivory in exchange. This is the trade. It has been running between Tyre and Tartessos for 400 years. Gadir was founded around 1100 BC as the westernmost outpost of a network that reached east across the Mediterranean to Mesopotamia. Tyre, Sidon, Carthage, and Gadir form the long spine. The silver from the Tinto Valley moves east along that spine. Phoenician pottery, finished metals, and glass beads move west. So does the alphabet. The Tartessians have begun adapting Phoenician letters to write something of their own. The Greeks come later. Herodotus tells the story of a Greek captain named Koleios of Samos, blown off course around 638 BC and carried by accident to Tartessos. He returned home wealthier than any Greek before him. They made greater profit from their cargo than any other Greeks of whom we have certain knowledge. Koleios' voyage was the first time a Greek ship reached the western edge of the world. Many would follow. The kingdom they reached had been trading silver for 4 centuries already. A man kneels before a limestone slab in an open quarry near the town that will one day be called Beja. The slab is roughly rectangular, slightly taller than his torso, partially carved. He is about 30 years old. His forearms are dusted white with limestone powder that has stuck to his sweat. In his right hand, a fine iron chisel. In his left, a small bronze hammer. The year is around 600 BC. The sun is directly overhead, and the white stone reflects the light back into his face. He has to tilt his head to see the groove he is cutting. The chisel rings a short dry note with each tap. The note is the same every time. He is incising the 4th sign of a 1-line inscription that wraps the slab's edge. The signs run like a thread along a hem. Below the signs, in low relief, he has already carved the warrior the slab will commemorate. Sword, round mirror, sphere, 2-wheeled chariot. Standard elements of what scholars will later call the warrior stelae of the Tartessian Southwest. The script has about 28 signs. Some are vowels, some consonants, most are syllables. The system is semi-syllabic. It was adapted from the Phoenician alphabet generations ago, but those who adapted it changed it to fit their own speech. Their own speech, that is the problem. About 100 Tartessian inscriptions survive, carved on stones like this one. Scholars in the 19th and 20th centuries will read the signs phonetically. They will reconstruct the sounds, but the language behind the sounds will not yield to comparison. It is not clearly Indo-European, not clearly related to Basque, not clearly any language with surviving descendants. The signs can be read, the words cannot be understood. This is not the only such case in the ancient Mediterranean. Linear A on Crete and the script of the Indus Valley share the same condition. Legible signs, opaque tongues. The man in the quarry finishes the 4th sign. He blows the white dust out of the cut and moves the chisel to begin the 5th. His name is unknown. The dead man's name is unknown. The words of his epitaph are unknown. What survives is the gesture. A craftsman sits in a workshop in the lower valley of the Guadalquivir at the end of a working day. The year is around 700 BC. The forge along the south wall is banked down to coals. He has not added wood to it for 2 hours. The piece in his hand is finished. He turns it slowly between his thumb and his forefinger, checking for flaws. It is a small ornamental plaque of solid gold. The weight surprises him every time, even after 30 years. Gold is heavier than the eye expects. The plaque is one of 21 pieces commissioned by the council for a temple offering or for the burial of a priest. The records do not survive. What survives is the work. This craftsman is not the first in his line. His grandfather worked in the same room. His son will work here after him. The technique he uses now, soldering tiny gold beads in geometric patterns, came from a Phoenician smith who passed through Gadir generations ago. The Tartessians took it and refined it. Their filigree is finer than the Phoenician original. This is what we call the Tartessian Golden Age, the kingdom of Arganthonios. Centralized rule, probably a priestly mercantile elite at its head, linked to the Phoenician trade network and grown wealthy on silver and tin. The historian Strabo, writing 6 centuries later from the safety of the Roman Mediterranean, will record something startling about these people. They are considered the wisest of the Iberians. They have written records of their ancient history, poems and laws in verse, 6,000 of them, by their reckoning. 6,000 verses of law. None survives. In 1958, in a hill called El Carambolo on the western edge of Seville, 21 pieces of solid gold will be lifted out of a shallow pit by men who had come to grade a shooting range. About 3 kilograms. We will come back to that hill. The craftsman places the plaque on a square of dark cloth. He blows the fine gold dust out of his beard. What we have so far is a kingdom in its high summer. Silver flowing east through the harbor at Gadir. Gold leaving the workshops of the Guadalquivir for graves and temples we will later excavate. Ships from Tyre and from Samos and from Athens calling on the river. A king the Greeks called the Silver Man. A script of 28 signs being incised on stones across the Algarve and Andalusia. A body of laws written in verse, 6,000 of them. A people the Greeks considered the wisest of the Iberians. This is around 550 BC. The kingdom of Tartessos at its peak. Within a century and a half, it will be gone. Not destroyed in a single battle, not described as having fallen in any contemporary text. There is no account of an invasion, no account of an earthquake. There is no account at all. There is only silence. By the year 300 BC, when the next generation of Greek geographers tries to write about Tartessos, they will be working from books, not from sailors. By then, no Greek ship has seen it in living memory. By then, the kingdom has begun the long passage out of geography and into literature. Somewhere between 530 and 400 BC, the Tartessians did something with their temples that we are still trying to understand. A priest stands beside a stone altar in the inner courtyard of a sanctuary in what is now Extremadura, in central western Iberia. The morning is cold. He wears a heavy wool tunic dyed the color of dried blood. He is in his 50s. His beard is dark, his expression composed. His right hand rests on the withers of a young chestnut horse standing beside him. The horse is still. It does not pull against him. He breathes out and sees the breath in the air. Around him, in a concentric ring, 50 animals have already been laid out. Horses and oxen, mostly horses. The arrangement is deliberate. The work of the morning is almost finished. The torches that will burn the building down are stacked against the eastern wall, still unlit. The year is around 400 BC. The priest knows what comes next. After this offering, the sanctuary will be sealed by fire. No one will return. The Tartessians did this, not once. The archaeological record shows that across the southwestern peninsula, between roughly 530 and 400 BC, multiple Tartessian sites were closed by ritual burning, sealed and abandoned, done deliberately by the people who lived there. Why? We do not know. There are 4 candidate causes for the collapse, and they may all be partly true. First, the rise of Carthage in the western Mediterranean cut into Tartessian trade with the Phoenician East. Their economic spine bent and broke. Second, 1 or more tsunamis struck the Gulf of Cadiz during this period, with debated dates, possibly around 500 BC, possibly later. Third, the lower Guadalquivir was silting up. Cities that had been port cities became inland cities. Fourth, the military pressure of Carthage moving into the peninsula squeezed the Tartessian polity from the south. None of these is a single dramatic moment. None is described in any source. There is no account of the kingdom ending. There is only its absence in the next generation's geography. The priest finishes what he has come to do. The torches against the wall are lit. The sanctuary is sealed. A man in a small house in the Roman city of Amasea in northern Anatolia is writing the third book of his geography. The year is around 7 A.D. He is in his late 60s. The lamp on his table burns olive oil. He has just finished a paragraph about the Iberian Peninsula. He has written about a people called the Tartessians, who live in the southwest, near the Silver Country. They are, he says, the wisest of the Iberians. They have a body of laws in verse, 6,000 of them of great antiquity. His name is Strabo. He has never been to Iberia. He is working from books. The kingdom whose laws he is describing has not existed as a coherent polity for 300 years. This is how Tartessos enters its long second life. Not as a place, as a sentence, as a reference, as something read about, copied from earlier sources, kept alive in books by men who have never seen what they are describing. 350 years after Strabo, a Roman writer named Avienus composes a poem in Latin called Ora Maritima, the sea coasts. He is writing in the 4th century after Christ. He works from a Greek sailing manual that is already centuries old when it reaches him. He copies the manual into verse. He writes a single line about the river where Tartessos was, where once the Tartessian River poured its rich waters, now only marsh and reed. 800 more years pass. In 1154 A.D., in a stone-walled library in Palermo, Sicily, a man sits at a low table of cedar wood. His name is Al-Idrisi. He is 53 years old. He is the court geographer of the Norman king Roger II, who has commissioned him to make a map of the whole world. The map is being engraved into a silver plate. Open beside him are manuscripts of Strabo in Greek and in Arabic translation. He is writing about the great river that runs through Al-Andalus, which the local Arabs call Wadi al-Kabir, the Great River. He mentions a city the ancient Greeks knew somewhere near its mouth. In the lands of Al-Andalus, there was once a city called Tartessos, known to the wise of the Greeks, whose location is now lost beneath marsh and river. He has never been there. The location is lost. He cites Strabo. Strabo cited earlier Greeks. The earlier Greeks were, by then, sailing into a place that still existed. 400 years after Al-Idrisi, Spanish and Italian travelers begin to walk through the lower Guadalquivir again. They see Roman ruins. They see Moorish ruins. They do not see Tartessian ruins because Tartessian ruins are buried under marsh and sediment too deep to read. They take notes. They publish books in Latin. They argue about which Roman town stood where. No one is looking for Tartessos. Tartessos is a word in Strabo. In the 19th century, Spanish amateur archaeologists begin to dig in the same regions. They find Phoenician pottery. They find inscriptions they cannot read. They find gold. They argue about whether what they have found is Phoenician or something else. In 1905, in the Philological Seminar at the University of Erlangen, a German professor reading Herodotus and Strabo will decide that this something else is the lost island of Atlantis. A man stands at the edge of a shallow trench in the marshes of Cerro del Trigo, near Sanlúcar de Barrameda, in the lower Guadalquivir. It is noon in July 1922. The temperature on the open marsh is close to 40 degrees Celsius. His cotton shirt is soaked through. He wears a wide-brimmed straw hat, small, round, wire-rimmed glasses, and a closely trimmed gray beard. He is 52 years old. 3 Spanish workers stand in the trench with short-handled shovels, screening the spoil through a wooden frame. On a makeshift table of pine boards, he has laid out a reproduction of a Herodotian map, drawn in sepia ink, and his field notebook in German. He has just been told what the morning's last trench produced, a single fragment of Phoenician pottery and otherwise mud. He locks his hands behind his back. He looks at the horizon of the marsh. He has been searching for a city for 17 years. He has not found it. His name is Adolf Schulten. He was born in 1870 in the Rhineland and took his doctorate at Bonn at 22. By 1922, he is the most prominent German archaeologist of ancient Hispania of his generation. He led the excavation of the Roman siege works at Numantia between 1899 and 1912. His work there is still cited. In 1905, reading Herodotus and Strabo and Avienus together, he came to a conclusion that would consume the rest of his life. The kingdom of Tartessos, named by the Greeks, was the same place as the lost island of Atlantis, named by Plato. The fall of the kingdom and the sinking of the island were the same event, described in different languages 800 years apart. He published the thesis as a book in 1922, Tartessos, ein Beitrag zur ältesten Geschichte des Westens. The first sentence of the preface reads, Tartessos is the Atlantis of Plato. This is the thesis of this book. This is the first academic monograph ever written about a civilization that had never been physically located. For 18 years he camped and dug and walked the marshes of Donana. He lived for months at a time in malarial conditions. He hired local workers and trained them. He drew his own maps. He recorded everything in his field notebooks. He went back to Erlangen each winter and returned in spring. He found Phoenician pottery. He found Roman ruins. He found Visigothic graves. He never found Tartessos. In 1923, he abandoned the search. He was 53. He kept writing about ancient Iberia for the rest of his career. He revised the Tartessos book in 1950. He died in Erlangen in 1960, 89 years old, having never seen the kingdom confirmed. He was wrong about Atlantis. Almost no serious scholar today follows him on that point. But he stood, in 1922, on the surface of the right place, exactly where he locked his hands behind his back and looked at the horizon. Beneath the marsh, the city was. He could not see it. The tools to see it had not yet been invented. A man sits in a reading room of the Academy on the western edge of Athens. He is in his late 60s. His gray cloak is fine wool. A roll of papyrus is stretched on a low table supported by 2 trestles. His right hand holds a reed pen. He has just written a word for the first time, and he has stopped. The word is Atlantis. The year is around 360 BC. The man's name is Plato. He is composing a dialogue that will be called the Timaeus, and a second dialogue that will follow it called the Critias. The Critias will be left unfinished. The story he is putting on the papyrus is told by a character named Critias, who attributes it to the lawgiver Solon, who, the dialogue claims, learned it from an Egyptian priest in the city of Sais more than a century earlier. The story concerns an island beyond the Pillars of Heracles, a great civilization of unmatched power and unmatched arrogance that picked a war with the Athenians of 9,000 years before, lost it, and was destroyed by the gods. Plato writes, there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. He puts the pen down. What is he doing here? Most scholars who have studied the question carefully give the same answer. Plato is composing a philosophical allegory. He is using the form of a story about a lost civilization to ask his real questions about hubris, about justice, about what happens to a society when it forgets the difference between greatness and dominance. He is not writing history. He is using a story shape to do philosophy. But the story shape worked. For the next 2,400 years, Atlantis lived in the European imagination as if it had been a place. Renaissance scholars argued about where it had stood. Sailors looked for it. In the centuries that followed, candidates were proposed and dropped. The Minoans, the pre-Columbian Americas, a sunken landmass in the Atlantic. The myth attracted serious thinkers and dreamers in equal measure. It attracted obsessives. In 1905, in a philological seminar at the University of Erlangen, it attracted a certain Adolf Schulten. An older Spanish archaeologist stands on a hill on the western edge of Seville, in the small town of Camas, on the morning of September 30th, 1958. He is 59 years old. His hair is white, cut short. He wears a linen jacket. In his hands, he holds two heavy bracelets of solid gold. The hill is called El Carambolo. Workmen reshaping a local shooting range had broken through a layer of clay an hour earlier and uncovered a shallow pit. They had called the archaeologist. He had come quickly. He counts the pieces mentally as the workmen set them down on a clean cotton cloth across the seat of a wicker chair. Articulated necklaces, pectoral plates, bracelets, decorations of fine filigree, 21 pieces, just under 3 kilograms of gold. He knows already, by the workmanship, what he is looking at. It is Tartessian, the first major Tartessian gold ever found in a controlled context. His name is Juan de Mata Carriazo. Schulten had been dead for almost 20 years by then. After he abandoned the search in 1923, the German academic project on Tartessos went quiet. The Spanish Civil War came and ended. The Second World War came and ended. The kingdom that had drawn Schulten into the marshes had drawn no successors of his kind. The search for the capital, specifically, had cooled, but the Southwest kept giving up pieces. Carriazo's find at El Carambolo in 1958 sent Tartessian gold into the Museo Arqueológico de Sevilla, where it is still displayed. In the decades that followed, dozens of warrior stelae with Tartessian script were catalogued in regional museums in Andalusia and the Algarve. Bronzes turned up, pottery turned up. The material existed. It was accumulating. Something else was accumulating in parallel. Ground-penetrating radar was developed in the 1960s and 1970s, refined for archaeological use through the 1980s. High-resolution satellite imagery became available in the 1980s and 1990s. Precise GPS came in the 2000s. Sedimentary analysis got faster and finer. By around 2010, for the first time, it was technically possible to look under the marsh of Donana without digging. A generation that had no obsession was about to inherit a kingdom. A woman is kneeling at the bottom of a rectangular trench cut 2 meters into the earth in the rolling plain of Extremadura. She is 43 years old. Her hair is tied back. She holds a fine bristled brush in her right hand. With the brush, she is uncovering, stroke by stroke, the outline of a stone face. The face is being worked free of the earth that has held it for over 2,400 years. Above her, on the edge of the trench, a man stands watching. He is 59, gray-bearded, wearing a khaki field shirt streaked with light dust. The light is falling. The Extremaduran sky is going copper. The man is Sebastian Celestino. The woman is Esther Rodriguez Gonzalez. They are co-directors of excavations at a site called Casas del Turunuelo in Badajoz province. They have been digging here together since 2014. What they have found is the best preserved Tartessian sanctuary ever excavated. The mound was catalogued in 1934 as an earthwork of unknown date and left undisturbed for 80 years. When Celestino and Rodriguez Gonzalez opened it in 2014, what came out of the earth changed what we know about how Tartessos ended. The sanctuary was destroyed by deliberate ritual fire around 400 BC. The Tartessians burned it down before they left. Around the central altar, in a concentric ring, they had sacrificed approximately 50 animals, mostly horses, some oxen, a few sheep. Then they had walked away. The fire collapsed the structure and sealed the offering. It preserved what would otherwise have rotted: textiles, wood, iron tools of a refinement no one had expected from this period. Multiple inscriptions in Tartessian Script, and, in 2018, what Rodriguez Gonzalez is brushing free of the earth this afternoon: a stone relief of a human face, the first sculptural depiction of a human being ever recovered from a Tartessian site. The face has eyes. It is looking somewhere. Why did they burn their own temple before they left? The scholarship has no answer. The ground holds an open silence at the heart of the richest Tartessian site in existence. They sealed it. They walked out. Casas del Turunuelo is not the capital. The capital is somewhere else. A geophysicist walks across a wooden plank platform laid over the mud of the Donana marsh on the western shore of the lower Guadalquivir. It is a gray morning in winter, around 2015. He is roughly 50 years old. His knee-high rubber boots are caked with brown muck from his last step off the platform. In his right hand, the wireless controller of the instrument that is rolling forward on wide wheels behind him. The instrument is a ground-penetrating radar unit. Its antenna sends electromagnetic pulses down into the soft sediment below the marsh and listens for what bounces back. On the tablet strapped to his belt, the returns are drawing themselves into thin gray lines. Most of the lines are smooth and undulating, which is what natural sediment looks like under the radar. A new line appears that is not smooth. It is straight. He stops walking. He marks the coordinate. His name is Antonio Rodriguez Ramirez. He is a geophysicist at the Instituto de Geociencia, IGOCSIC, the Spanish National Research Council. Since 2014, he has been leading a multi-method survey of the Donana Marsh: ground-penetrating radar, bathymetry, high-resolution aerial photography, sedimentary core analysis. The work combines 4 disciplines that had not, until now, talked to each other systematically about this place. What he and his team are looking at, season by season, are the residues of human structures buried beneath roughly 1 to 2 meters of marsh sediment in a protected park that is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Donana has been a Parque Nacional since 1969. You cannot dig in it. You can only look through it. Schulten dug in it 20 kilometers north of where Rodriguez Ramirez is standing this morning between 1905 and 1923, because the law was different and the marsh was less protected, and he did not need permission of the kind that is required now. What Schulten dug in vain, the radar can see. The data from this morning, processed in the lab in Madrid over the next 2 years, will be combined with hundreds of other survey lines and rendered into a three-dimensional model. When the model is complete, the team will look at what is under the marsh. The looking is scheduled for the autumn of 2017. A young woman stands before a glass case in the Tesoro del Carambolo room of the Museo Archeologico de Sevilla on a Wednesday morning in the spring of 2025. She is about 22. Her hair is brown, pulled into a knot. A backpack rests on the floor at her ankles. An open notebook lies across her left forearm. She is taking notes. The case in front of her holds the 21 pieces of gold that Juan de Mata-Carriazo lifted out of the hill at El Carambolo on a September morning in 1958. Necklaces, bracelets, a pectoral plate, decorations in filigree so fine the light catches on the seams between the beads. She has read about them in the textbook still open in her bag, Tartessos and the Phoenicians in Iberia, by Celestino and Lopez Ruiz, published by Oxford in 2016. It is the standard reference. She studies archaeology at the University of Seville. Tartessos is her area. What she sees here and what she will see in the next room, fragments of the stone relief from Casas del Turunuelo, dug out by Rodriguez Gonzalez in 2018, is what we have recovered. Funerary stele with the partially read script, the gold of El Carambolo, the sanctuary of Casas del Turunuelo, the best preserved Tartessian site we know. Structures confirmed by radar beneath the Donana marsh awaiting excavation. Mentions in Herodotus and Strabo and Avienus and Al-Idrisi. What we have not recovered is the capital itself, still under the marsh, only confirmed and not yet opened. The 6,000 verses of law, still unread. Any literature the Tartessians may have written about themselves, the language they spoke. Direct descendants in any meaningful ethnographic sense. What is left is more than what was there 100 years ago. What is left is less than what existed in the 7th century BC. The student writes the date of El Carambolo in the margin of her notebook, 1958. Then she writes another date below it, 2017. Then she draws a line connecting the two. It is late afternoon in October of 2017, in a laboratory in the Severo Ochoa building of the CSIC campus on the northern edge of Madrid. The room has cinder block walls painted white and a gray linoleum floor. There are several computer stations along the walls, mostly unoccupied at this hour. At the center of the room, a large monitor on a desk. Antonio Rodriguez Ramirez sits at the desk in a swivel chair, his right hand on the mouse. He has just turned the gain up on the volumetric rendering. Sebastian Celestino stands behind his left shoulder, his palm flat on the back of the chair. Esther Rodriguez Gonzalez sits to the right, an A4 notebook on her knees, a pen between her fingers, uncapped. On the screen is a three-dimensional model of the subsurface of a section of the Donana Marsh, processed from 3 years of ground-penetrating radar data combined with bathymetric profiles and high-resolution aerial imagery. The surface of the marsh is gray. The sediment immediately below the surface is gray. The structures below the sediment are gray. The shades differ by less than the eye should be able to resolve. But the eye does resolve them. There are rectilinear lines. There are curves too regular to be natural drainage. There are arrangements of features at the scale of streets and buildings. They are not on the surface of the marsh. They are roughly 1.5 meters down, sealed beneath sediment laid in by the river over 23 centuries. No one in the room speaks for several seconds. The ventilation fans of the computers are audible. The wall clock ticks. The location they are looking at lies a few kilometers from where Adolf Schulten stood in July of 1922 and looked at the horizon of the marsh. 95 years have passed between the two moments. The first publication of these results will appear in early 2018. The first physical excavation under the marsh by permission of the Park Authority will begin in 2025. It will take decades to complete. The 3 researchers in the room this afternoon will not see most of it in their lifetimes. What they see this afternoon is what Schulten could not see. That the city was there, that he had been within walking distance of it, that what he had spent 18 years failing to find beneath conditions that could only be looked through by instruments that did not exist until long after he was dead was real, was a real city, was Tartessos. He had been wrong about Atlantis. He had been right about the marsh. Donana at dawn, from the air. The marsh spreads to the horizon in long, pale curves. The water in the channels picks up the rose and copper of the early light. Somewhere 1.5 meters below the surface, beneath sediment laid year by year for 23 centuries, a city is keeping the position it held when its people walked away. This is the third of 3 videos about what the sea took. There was Minoan Crete, whose palaces ran on a script we still cannot read, until the volcano on Thera tore open the eastern Mediterranean, and the kingdom that remained was no longer the kingdom that had been. There was Doggerland, walked by Mesolithic hunters for thousands of years, and lost slowly to the rising North Sea, returning to us only as bones snagged in fishermen's nets. And there is Tartessos on the western edge of Iberia, swallowed with a name and carried for 2,000 years by the names alone. The thread by which a civilization reaches us is not one thread. It is many. Each is improbable. Each, when it holds, is enough. Some held by being written down. Some held because stone outlasted everything else. Some held in a language that lost all its other speakers but kept its words on clay. Some held by a fragment caught in a fisherman's net. Some held by the obsession of one human being who looked for what almost no one else was looking for, often for reasons that turned out to be wrong. What this tells us is something we did not know how to say at the start of these 3 videos. The continuity of human civilization is not maintained by institutions and not by power. It is maintained by individual carriers, sometimes named, often nameless, frequently wrong about what they are carrying, almost always carrying it through circumstances that make the carrying difficult. The thread does not ask us to know what we are doing. It asks only that someone keep doing something. Copying, reading, walking the same ground year after year with a tool whose name we may not yet have until the moment when what was lost is found. Schulten was wrong about Atlantis. The story Plato told in 360 BC was philosophy in the costume of a lost world. It was not history. The scholarship is nearly unanimous on that point now. But Schulten was right about where he was standing. Herodotus and Strabo and Avienus and Al-Idrisi had told him across a chain of citations 2,000 years long that there had been a kingdom at the mouth of the great river. He believed them. He went there. He looked for 18 years in malarial heat and did not see. 1 century after his work failed, three researchers who shared none of his obsession, who had only good instruments and patient method, looked at the same ground and saw. On the North Sea, somewhere off the coast of England, a fisherman closes his hands around a bone caught in his net and lifts it out of the water. And the bone is older than his country. In Madrid, in October of 2017, three researchers read a screen processed from radar and bathymetry and satellite. The instruments could not be more different. Both are kinds of looking. Both are how a civilization comes back. The thread holds in many forms, some held deliberately, some held by accident, some held by being lost and found and lost again, and finally, after long waiting, named. Tartessos was not Atlantis. Tartessos was Tartessos. Sometimes that is enough. You have watched 3 videos about what the sea took. Minoan Crete, where a palace economy ran on a script we still cannot read, until a summer afternoon when the volcano on Thera tore open the eastern Mediterranean, and the kingdom that remained was no longer the kingdom that had been. Doggerland, the country between Britain and the continent, walked by Mesolithic hunters for thousands of years and swallowed slowly by the rising North Sea, returning to us only in the bones that snag in fishing nets. And Tartessos, on the western edge of Iberia, where a kingdom traded silver with Phoenicians for 5 centuries and then sealed its temples and walked away, where 100 years after the wrong man almost found it, the right instruments could. 3 civilizations the sea took in 3 different ways. 3 ways of being lost. 3 ways of coming back. If you have stayed with us through these 3 videos, thank you. The time you have given is not small, and we know it. The channel pauses here for a while. There is new material to research, new dossiers to prepare, new threads to follow. When the next arc begins, it will begin with the same care. If something in these 3 has stayed with you, subscribe. Wait with us. Every empire ends. The thread does not.